because I understand you introduced House Bill 2124
Yes, I
in
did.
the interest of economic development.
Correct.
Explain that to me.
Well, as you know, there's a move for growing marijuana in the United States. I think that with the revenue that we're going to collect, your imagination is the only thing that would limit you. The revenue will be in the billions. And not only in farming it, but also in manufacturing it. And why miss out on that opportunity? This is a working group that's going to be fine-tuning the details on how we can export it. Let me just be clear, it's not for local use, okay? And please know that the production or sale of marijuana is something that's the Obama administration and the courts have stepped backwards for the state to control, or the regulation is now within the state. We just have to work out the other details wherein there's still some federal restrictions on federal territories. But I'm hoping as the whole nation moves to the distribution of it, because as you know, there's now a couple of states that have legalized it, and they have ran out in a couple of weeks. Okay, and their states have made billions of money. So with the revenue that we can collect, internationally, I think that we can fund our schools. Maybe the state doesn't have to pay taxes. We can build our roads. We can fund our unmandated liability. We are going to be a state that would serve our people to their, whatever it is, to their liking.
You mentioned federal details need to be ironed out, and I want to, of course, say
Yeah.
these are not insignificant details. You're looking at the possibility of violating federal drug trafficking laws, given how current statutes are written. So
Right.
how then do we sort of overcome that obstacle?
Well, if you read the bill, it's a working group. So the intent of that working group is to iron out those. Should that be lifted, then we're ready to rock.
Okay.
We are hoping, I've spoken to somebody, even the Department of Agriculture, they're hoping that that ban would be lifted around May. There's initiatives to lift that ban. It is, I agree with you. But as you say, the laws in our countries is on the power of the ink. So I am glad to again reiterate that the current administration and judicial system is stepping back and let the states decide. And if that movement is there, I'm encouraged that perhaps the next step would be to lift the federal ban.
So I'm sorry, for clarity, just because I'm not very familiar, there's a movement currently to lift which federal restrictions?
You cannot move marijuana under federal jurisdictions. Let's see the airport. I mean, it's legal now to use medical marijuana, okay? And there's other initiatives in the state that would further the creation of, and I'll let my colleagues talk about it later, about dispensaries, because I think that would be the next step. But the problem still that if you are a patient in Maui and you would like to move to Oahu, you cannot carry that at the airport. And it's still the same problem that this bill would have to resolve. And the working group is standing by to make sure, should that federal lift come to play, that we as a state is on the forefront, that we are ready, that we have worked out those details. And that's what the working group will do.
You do mention dispensaries, and we actually had the opportunity here from the Speaker of the House about really the need to create access for patients who are legally obtaining medical marijuana prescriptions but don't have access to medical marijuana. So for people who may take a look at this bill and say, well, why not then target something that can really help people where legal use is already in play? Why not consider getting income through?
It will go to the chairs, and I think that if this body decides to amend the bill and put that in, I think it would be a wonderful idea.
How do you see this working? Okay, so in your mind, what's the ultimate vision? I know you said about exporting, but do you see people being able to grow it in the fields here, where, which islands, and then how would it work in that I know there's a working group still to be working it out, but how do you see it working in the big picture? Then what countries would it go to? Where would it go in the United States?
Well, the Netherlands have legalized use for it. And I think that we can have public safety, the Department of Public Safety has done a wonderful job, and I'm sure it will continue to do a wonderful job. So it would be, farmers. It would be, it's not a backyard farm. That's not what we're talking about. I mean, the Big Islands and Maui have lots of farms in there. And as you know, marijuana is a weed. It grows everywhere here. So there will be a contract with rules in place to farm them. And I think that's a solution. I mean, this is going to be an economic engine unparalleled by anything else because we have the perfect soil and we have the round climate to grow them, and our farmers will never be poor again.
I guess my question is, where's your belief that this demand exists that would require our supply, given that it seems that most areas are already saturated with whether they have legalized marijuana for medical use or whether they've legalized it for recreational use, as you mentioned, the two other states. Where's sort of the data coming from that leads you to believe that this would be such an economic engine for the state, given there does not seem to be sort of an issue of supply when it comes to marijuana?
Well, I think that Colorado ran out in the first 2 weeks. And then the Netherlands, once you put in Hawaii-grown marijuana, that would trump any supplier they may have. I honestly believe that. And this state would turn into a manufacturing state. Can you imagine factories that would be making Maui Wowie cookies and making marijuana macadamia nut chocolate candies for export? This is not for local use. So, I think that would be wonderful.
Why do you keep saying it's not for local use? How would you like to see? You don't want it to be here, sold here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not there. I don't agree that our people should be using it. I mean, but I think if those countries that have accepted it for their people, they have laws in place for it, who am I to judge?
What kind of support do you have in the caucus and also from the Senate and possibly from the law enforcement community?
Well, that's why we're hearing the bill. We'll soon find out.
Have you had any discussions with either the DEA or the U.S. Attorney's Office, given that it'll be a question of whether or not the DEA will crack down and then whether or not the U.S. Attorney's Office would actually prosecute?
That would be the job of the working group. I'm a legislator. I put those out. Not everything that we introduce in the House passes, and we're not going to do everything. That's why we develop working groups. And when that's formed, I'm sure you'll be there.
So what is your, I guess, just now initial belief or reception that you're getting from other lawmakers in terms of just the viability of this bill?
Well, I think that my colleagues here supports it. It's just like not everyone will come out and say, I support it. I mean, but I know deep in their heart, being that the problem of the state, even though the governor says we're $900 billion in the positive, this lingering problem about unfunded liabilities and funding preschools, more affordable housing, those still have to be funded. And we put on for many years, have put on this thing about gambling, and it doesn't pass the House because they don't want it here. That's an economic engine that even my constituents are telling me that's where we should be going. But I said, no. But this one, everybody benefits. The farmers, the manufacturers. And with the revenue that we're going to get, that would proliferate in every household in the state.
Do you have dollar figures that you can attach to sort of your revenue estimates?
It's in the billions. It's in the billions.
And those statistics are coming from where?
It's just that, if the state of Colorado made $1.6 billion in 2 weeks just by selling it, how much do you think we're going to make for producing it and selling it when we are the best? We are the best. We have the best marijuana in the world. I haven't tried it. But will the people that have tried it say, wow?
I was just going to ask you if you've inhaled.
No, I haven't.
Not a marijuana user?
No.
Just a fan?
No, I'm not even a fan of it. But if that's what takes our state to the forefront, that we can fix our roads, we can build more affordable housing, we can fund the homeless. That's the route we should go.
And so then what about critics who say that this bill is just dead on arrival because of the federal jurisdictional details you mentioned?
In time, Malika, I will prove them wrong. Maybe I cannot prove it today, but in time, you will remember this interview that at that point in time, I was skeptical. But see, she made it. I have a doctor to my right.
I was going to say, would you like to weigh in on this?
I think that it's hard for me to say at this point how powerful an economic engine would be for Hawaii. I admire her faith in that, and I think it might be warranted. I think that's part of why a working group is useful to explore it, because, as she said, that would prepare us to be ready if the opportunity presented itself to our state. And, our country is moving towards, an eventual goal of legalization of marijuana. It's, legalized in, a host of states for medical reasons. And if it's, when you look at the risk-benefit of marijuana versus other things like narcotics, the risk is small and the benefit is huge.
In terms of the taxes, what do you envision for the taxes on this? I know gambling, we've talked about 15%. Normally we have a 4.5 GE tax. Are you seeing in your mind a bigger tax?
25%. 25%. Yes, and I think that would still fly.
Okay, now in Colorado, there's been an issue of the marijuana being higher to purchase legally because of taxes than it is through the black market. Not in every case, but is that something that you see as a concern?
No, because this is just for export. It's not for local use. So wherever they're cultivated and whatever process they do is packed and probably sent to the airport or to the pier, whatever the route that they may choose, and to the manufacturers.
So it would be a 25% export tax or a production tax, or how would that
whatever
work?
tax we can get. It will be enormous. Whatever tax we can come up with, it will be there. And people in Hawaii will be so happy, because this may be the state that they don't have to pay property tax.
What spearheaded this bill for you?
It's the national movement. It's the national movement, the other states, and research. That states are really making a lot of money out of this. And I don't intend to make money with my constituents, but I do intend to make money on the Netherlands.
And I guess you mentioned the shortage in Colorado. For people who said, that's akin to like running out of flowers on Valentine's Day. People were just very excited in the first 2 weeks. What would your response to that be? Do you really believe that there is, in fact, a shortage crisis?
Well, we are only selling to states or to countries that have legalized use. Okay.
So this would not include export to Colorado or Washington?
No, not yet. Not unless that we have, I think it's easier to lift the ban of its transport to a foreign country than to send it within the United States, honestly. I think if you just pack it for export, those laws may be easier to pass.
And what about security? How would you envision this? If somebody has a marijuana farm, how would you envision them securing that and then through the transport, so make sure that it doesn't end up here locally?
Well, like I said earlier, the Department of Public Safety have done a good job, and I'm sure they will continue to do a good job.
Representative Hanohano, she mentioned farming on Hawaii Island. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's already growing. Of course, it's illegal, but we do have the highest medical permits on Hawaii Island, because we have a lot of people that are in need of medical marijuana. So I did also introduce a compassion center bill so that they wouldn't have to go to the black market to get their marijuana. And like my colleague said, it is an economic driver too. And also it takes care of the health for people that are in need, especially people that have cancer or people that cannot eat. And I have met a lot of these people that really need it, and that is why I'm very for having the compassion centers. But I also did introduce 3 other bills concerning marijuana. The other one was to change the medical schedule at the federal level, from the highest to kind of bring it back down so it will be available. Also, I introduced another bill for the recreational use, where it would be $100 fine for the civil penalties, and also a legalization one. But my legalization one would be for everybody. It wouldn't only be for people outside of Hawaii.
What about the tax issue? Do you think it should be 25% tax, or what was your thoughts on that?
Well, it's kind of hard because there's so many different ways of